Sorry. Thank you. We'll acknowledge, do the acknowledgement of treaties of peace and friendship. We'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is traditional unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq peoples. This territory is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship, which Wolastoqiyik, Mi'kmaq, and Passamaquoddy peoples first signed with the British Crown in 1726. The treaties did not deal with surrender of lands and resources, but in fact recognized Mi'kmaq and Wolastoqiyik title and established rules for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations. Thank you. Well, next we'll have the reaffirmation oath of office. We do hereby accept the office of council and will diligently, faithfully, and impartially discharge to the best of our ability the duties of the office as may be imposed upon us by law. Next is the adoption of the agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Okay. So, can we get a motion to adopt the agenda?
I move that the agenda be adopted as presented.
Can we get a seconder? Seconded by Chief Legacy. All those or on the question, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The agenda is adopted. Statements of conflict of interest. Does anyone this evening need to declare a conflict of interest? They believe? Okay. Then we'll move on. We don't have any guests tonight, I don't believe. We'll go to the adoption of the minutes of the last meeting, which was July 29th, 2021. Do we have, can we get a motion to adopt the minutes of the agenda?
I move that the minutes of the fire EMO meeting held on Thursday, July 29th, 2021 be adopted as presented.
Moved by Councillor Carrier, seconded by Deputy Chief Furlong. Business arising from the minutes. I have one thing. The last meeting, when you had asked about frequency, there was some trouble with the frequency in terms of getting calls and such, getting the same. If I remember correctly, it was like some of the calls that you weren't getting that they were up here. Okay, so, and I think at that time, if I remember right, you had also asked if we could talk to MB Power about perhaps using, was it the transmitters, the transformers? Yeah. So at the last liaison committee, I brought that up to Bob Scott. He's an official in Fredericton. And if I remember correctly, Deputy Mayor Berg, do you remember that conversation? Because I remember he said he would get back to us and he seemed like, but do you recall?
No, I have not heard back from Bob on that issue. In fact, I'll make a note of it and touch base with him again tomorrow.
You still want us to follow up on that with him?
I think it would be better because radios are still extremely staticky. Sometimes they're clear, sometimes it's hard to understand them. It all depends on where in the village you are located. It's better because we had them do some repairs. They did find one of the power sites had a piece of equipment that failed. They repaired that since, so it's approved, but it's not where it should be.
So we'll definitely follow up on that because he knows about it and he said, yeah, I'm going to see what I can do. You're welcome. Other business arising from the minutes? Okay, then we'll move on. Reports, budget update.
I gave you each a copy of the budget updates up until the end of October. So that's where we're at right now, what's available. I don't think there's any bills we're waiting to be paid, so Brenda said there was nothing pending because everything pretty much is is paid up to date.
Okay, so everything seems to be in order there. Anything from your side, Chief Legacy, that you wanted to? Okay. Any council members with questions or comments?
I'll make a comment. In all honesty, I believe, Chief Legacy, you are responsible for the budget. And I believe you deserve to be commended in controlling it and dealing with it that way, so well done.
Yeah. Okay. Policies, review of policies and procedures. So,
Okay, so, what I remember when we talked about the last meeting, we were gonna, so I was talking to Dwayne yesterday and I sent him the latest copy of the policies and procedures. And I thought that maybe if the, Chief Legacy and Deputy Chief Furlot and captains went through it themselves in the fire department first to see what changes they would maybe like to be made, instead of everybody sitting there and going page for page for page. And then there would, Dwayne said he would just put the changes in a different color, and I can send that out, we can, and even if we meet at one point in time, instead of everybody having, so whatever they look to be changed, I think it would be a good idea then for everybody to go through it all.
I
And
agree.
I can give you copies.
yeah. And I remember last term, that's what we did, like
Yes.
for a little background for new council members, that's what
Yeah.
we did last term. We took it and we went line by line and point by point. But I think this one works just as well, maybe even better, having them look at it first and then coming back to us and say this works or this doesn't work and may need changes, and then we can discuss it, right? So, any council members not okay with doing it that way? Okay, then that's the way we'll approach the policies and, of the, fire department, okay? Next then is, old business. Is there any old business that we need to take care of or deal with or attend to? Anything on your side, Chief Legacy?
Just update on our rescue van for Station 1. Never heard nothing from Scott or Medevac.
Last, I remember, I know not very long ago, he had mentioned it to me in a meeting, but I thought, so I'll follow that up to see, because I thought that was pretty much,
We had a meeting with Scott and Medevac and Chris Kingston, yeah. 2 weeks ago,
so at the end of that meeting, where was that at the end of that meeting? Where was it pretty much at? Like, was everything,
Medevac was to go back to redo the drawings to, eliminate their logo from it, so it was a generic platform for whoever's entering. And basically, this is the design, the layout, and the specification for it. That was supposed to come back to us for approval prior to being put into a full tender. Right. And it hasn't not come to me up until the change.
so I'm getting Scott and Chuck in touch with Seal Ferguson and ask him to hand that back to you guys.
was that it, Chief Legacy? For that? Okay.
If I may, Your Worship. Under the minutes at the last meeting, we had requested, I guess, the buildings that you considered dangerous and unsightly. You sent in a very positive list. We thank, on behalf of council, we thank you very much for that, because we consider that an extremely important document in beautifying our community and getting things addressed. So, well done, and thank you for that document.
Yeah, that helped, that was very helpful. I think that's gonna be helpful to us and the planning commission too. Any other thoughts on that, council members, or? No? Okay. So we'll move on to new business, and Councilor Carmichael has something that she wants to bring to council and attention.
Yes, this has been started way back in probably February or March. It's plaques for the fire department. It's for the recognition of their years of service. I went locally to Dale Smear, and he designed the plaque. I sent a picture to Fire Chief Keith, and he told me that they were good. So last Friday, I dropped the plaques, and they're supposed to get them started to do a draft on it. Whenever I have that, I will forward that to the Father Keith, to Deputy Chief, to Chief Keith, and from there, once everything's okay and we make sure the names are well spelled and everything, we'll go ahead and get it. I like to have it done by the end of the year because I like to have it on this year's budget. So it was slow coming. It's because of the design. Was looking at different areas, and Dale Smear was the one that came with the design. So I just wanted to give you an update on that. So it's moving forward. It's slow. The request was for 3 plaques, 1 for each fire department and 1 for here. So just so you know that it's not forgotten. It's in the works.
Any questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Councillor Carmichael. Next up, fundraising from Chief Legacy, by Chief Legacy.
I got a phone call prior to last week. Someone had donated some money. I wasn't sure how about we do it. Anyway, I gave Brenda a call, and she said any money that's we raise really should go to the village, because if it's to buy equipment. So I explained it to her that the fundraising that we do is not to buy equipment, it's to pay for extra insurance that we get. And let's say Cynthia is the head of the Girl Guides and she's requesting $50 from us, that we give it to her. That's part of the fundraising that we do. So, and anyway, she said that I should bring it up to the meeting and see what you guys want to do about it. So that's why we do the fundraising. It's not for just ourselves, it's for the community too. For Girl Guides, for figure skating, minor hockey, pretty well anything. They ask us for money, we usually give it. We set a bar and we give what we.
This is a situation where somebody's actually offered to make a donation to you, right? Okay. So you're just looking for some clarification on the process? Yeah.
It's not to buy equipment for the fire department. It's to raise money for stuff like that.
Okay. Okay, so I'll get you some clarification on that too. Okay. And that's good to know, because for future reference as well. So maybe we'll mark that down. We'll get that. Yep. Is there anything else, Chief? Anyone have any questions or comments on that? Okay, so we'll get that information to you. Next one is the monthly fire calls to Shaw and Chaleur sawmills. Councillor Guitar McDonnell.
I just had a few questions about this. I'm just curious. There's a lot of calls that go to those area, correct? Has it increased in the past year? Like, have you got more calls? It's the same?
What happens is that if they're doing any work in there, a couple of calls ago, someone hit the sprinkler with a forklift. The alarm goes off, goes to dispatch, and dispatch calls us.
Okay.
So they should be getting in contact with their alarm system company and tell them that what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So they won't dispatch, they won't call dispatch, they won't call us. They're not doing that. We get a call, we're gonna go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially with the short song, you never know what's going.
No, I know.
You never know what's gonna happen when you get there.
Well, that's my concern too, because I'm understanding that I can hear sirens, and I'm thinking it happens quite often. I'm just wondering if they have like inspections that go in to make sure they're following all these rules and regulations, owning a company like this. Do we know anything about that?
I would suggest that every time we go there, and if it's something stupid like that, maybe we should start charging.
Oh, I thought that we didn't we? No?
Yes, we do.
For false calls?
We're supposed to charge for false calls. We have the past, they've never paid it. And then it's like if you get the report 3 months later, it's hard to go back and say, we had false calls, false alarm calls, but there is a charge for false alarm calls. And they happen often there, at both places.
Is it just that when we get a call, bring in a report to you right away?
Even if we don't get paid, then we have something to go back on and say, look, we keep sending you invoices for false alarms and we haven't gotten paid. I know the last few we sent last year never got paid.
Maybe too, that might be a discussion that CEO Ferguson might have to have with Mr. Woods maybe, right? And say, listen, this is an issue that we have, and if it continues, you know, then perhaps you guys need to cost share. Address it. Either address the issue itself or be willing to cost share, right? So that it's not, if you guys are gonna go there and it's not gonna be on the village all the time, right? And it's not gonna be on you guys all the time. Schiller Sawmills should, you know, it depends how frequently it happens. I'm not sure, but it sounds like it happens quite frequently. But at least begin with a conversation maybe between CEO Ferguson and Mr. Woods and say, this is a conversation we need to have. Start there. If it
Yeah.
gets better. Yeah,
Yeah.
If he wants me there with that conversation with him, I'll be more than willing to go.
yeah. That might be, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably best that you, because I'm sure there might be some questions or some scenarios that you can sort of describe that Scott wouldn't be able to do. So, yeah, okay. We'll,
Just to make it clear to council here is that after you get so many of these, I call them like false calls, you know what I mean? Well, there's gonna be sooner or later some of the guys or girls in the fire department, they're not gonna answer the page. Where it may be a real call. So, we're getting to a point now that we may start getting complacent. So I just wanna make council aware of that.
That's a good point to make.
To make-
Because after you get so many calls from the same place, it's always repetitive. The next call at 3 o'clock in the morning, guess why?
and that's the call, and that's the serious call. And people aren't,
That's the one that's gonna bite us.
right.
That's one of if you show up and they're targeted there, you make the second call, and then you don't show up, then we call for backup. Yes, but be probably would be going back.
Yeah, that sounds like it's time to have that conversation, I think.
I can see that happening.
Yeah, and that's a good point to make too, like, you know, for their own, for their benefit too, right? Okay, Councilor Contamert?
Sometimes they're working on their equipment there and they don't call their company, tell them, like, we're working on our equipment, we're gonna take us offline. They don't do that.
They should be
They're not responsible.
They should be like calling whoever's working on the alarm system at either industry. Somebody's just gotta get on a cell phone or whatever it is and call dispatch and say, look, I'm so-and-so from the alarm company, we're working on this piece of equipment. If we trigger something on, please don't send the fire department, we're working on the system. Then dispatch knows in Bathurst what's going on, but this is not happening.
Yeah, for example, at work, whenever we test our pumps at work, we always gotta call the alarm company, tell them that we're testing our pumps, and they put us offline.
It's the same things that we did.
Just if I may, Your Worship. You know, this could end up being, you know, calling wolf too many times. The only request for me personally that I would make is that the fire department is the biggest liability we have. So the alarm goes off, I believe whether it's a false call or not, is are still paid? If you are headed to the fire? Yes. So with that said, please allow council and its legality and its legal, when you have a complaint, address it to council and not to the client. you know, because those type of things can become very, very sensitive very, very quickly. So I understand the frustration because I distinctly remember 5 and 6 years ago when it was exactly the same problem. So, you know, just be patient and allow council to deal with the issue. So, you know, okay?
That's one thing we never did was approach anybody about complaining about that.
Good.
And it sounds like it sounds like it's a conversation that needs to be had, so it'll definitely happen, yeah.
I would ask the question now to council that Administrative Assistant Nicole mentioned there that they've been billed and didn't pay. Maybe I'll ask the question, has that bill ran up? I would say so. So then we need to have that conversation sooner than later, because I can assure you, we wouldn't tolerate that type of response, for example, from other, you know, people didn't pay their taxes, they're gonna have problems. If people didn't pay for the water and sewage, they're gonna have problems. Therefore, we have a policy in place and they haven't paid, should be addressed.
I'm assuming there's reports on these calls that were called. I didn't realize it was a problem till really now, and I've been on council. I know it hasn't been brought up a whole lot of time. Not living near to, you don't really notice. I know I seen the fire when I was in Beldoon here, Lower Beldoon. The fire trucks go a couple of times by, not realizing where they're going. But yeah, I'm just wondering, like, we could have a yearly report to see how many times we go there, and I'm sure that there is a report there, yeah, there's a log. That way there, that we're aware of what's happening out there with our fire department also. Because I don't know the calls, how many calls you guys get. I hear that you're out on the road, but, you know, and I assume some are legit and some are like that, so. And like Deputy Mayor Burke was saying, you call wolf too many times, you know, like, are you going to a real call? And sometimes you let your guard down. It could be also a danger to the fire people, fire department, the women and the men that are going out. Like, you're going, think, oh, well, this is another false alarm. And you're going there and you're really dealing with reality. So.
I do, whenever I get the reports from Chief Legacy, I'll go through them and I'll do a log sheet of the date, what type of call it was, how many people responded, where it was, how many, you know, vehicles. The other thing too is we get a lot of requests to assist the ambulance service. And we also try to bill them and they won't pay either. Like, they'll request for the guys to go and help them put someone in the ambulance because they can't lift them or whatever. And but that's across New Brunswick. Like, everybody has that issue, they won't pay. So that's, you know, something that you may want to address too, but I know, because we talked to the Gilles in the town of Dalhousie, and he said the same thing, like, they go, but they're not being paid. But we, you know, we pay our firefighters, but the Ambulance New Brunswick doesn't pay.
Oh. Could be a separate call maybe from City of Ferguson to Ambulance New Brunswick to see what the story is on that, right?
We'll get a call lots of times, they, Paul said, you know, like, you know, it might be just two young, let's say, female attendants that lift like a real heavy person from the house into the ambulance. So they'll dispatch us out to go for a lift. So we send somebody got, whoever lands there, then we do the lift into the ambulance for them, like Nicole was saying. But also, to add to that, if the ambulance is not around, if they're on a call somewheres at Kamloops Regional or Bathurst Hospital or whatever it is, and there's an emergency in the middle of the night or in the day, anytime in a 24-hour period, they'll call upon the fire department to go there, like, to do CPR, resuscitate somebody if they're in cardiac arrest or anything like that. We get calls like that too. Just to
when dispatch calls us, they don't tell us their ambulance need assistance in lifting someone.
No.
They just say they need assist.
Just assist.
They don't have to say what it is.
Right.
So,
It sounds like the issue is just not paying after, right? Not coming forward with the help and appropriate perspective. So, well, that's two separate conversations, right? And we'll have one with each, right? So shorter song notes and then maybe give ambulance reps a call and see what the story is with that. Okay, anyone else have comments? Okay, I guess we then can move to
EMO? Anything on your side? Chief Legacy, do you guys have like much correspondence or communications with Scott and Mr. Poupart?
I get a lot of texts from them, yeah.
So that's a steady communication then, that's important, that's good. Okay.
When we had the derailment back there, Scott was in touch with me. They're doing the work on the railroad tracks here the other day, Scott. I got a text from him for that. Like, I get, Scott, you know, text us quite often.
Good.
Oh, yeah, I actually got text the other day. They were burning propane lines out of the smelter down there. You must have seen the torch there. What was it, a torch in the air? He said that they were burning off propane, emptying out the lines or whatever it is. So he does feel the same, right?
yes, anything that's major, he lets us know.
Yeah, like, we're always in touch with him.
That's important. That's very important. Yeah.
I do have one question on EMO, and I brought this up a few years ago. Do we have an EMO liaison or committee in the community per se? Because like say something happens here where we have to get Scott to come in with EMO, who's other than the chief, the contacts, like, because if we have a major incident, he's gonna be at the scene working, and there's nobody to coordinate the EMO side other than Scott. And Scott will be here, he'll be there, you know what I mean? Absolutely.
Here's what I know, here's what I think I know. Last month we did committees. We looked at some of our committees. There's supposed to be an EMO, a formal EMO committee, right? The mayor's on it, I believe, and Councilor Carmichael's on it. So we're trying to get that committee, like a lot of our committees, sort of given shape and form right now. And we don't, and you're exactly right. We should probably make that a priority, because if something were to happen, and that EMO committee is not established as it should be, that could create an issue.
Like when that train you were on, we lucked out that there was a non-volatile cargo. Where I used to live in Ontario, I had a train depot, main depot, and you had everything going from there, from Hydro-Saconia to Solvents to, you name it, you don't know what's in the cars until you get there, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm not supposed to be here.
No, I tell you, we escaped. That could have been a real, and this council was only in maybe a week. That happened on June 14th, I believe, and we were sworn in on June 7th. So, I mean, we would have been possibly a real bad scenario there. But, and you're absolutely right, if your EMO committee is established and people know who to call and who to contact, and then that could be very helpful. So you're right, we'll have to get on that. Yeah, very good point, appreciate that. Anyone else, any comments on that? Okay. Next is the next meeting, but I just wanted to ask, because we only have these discussions every 3 months, but just, not in a very specific sense, Chief Legacy, but in a very general sense. Are you guys happy with how things are going along, and, you know, are you satisfied with things for the most part, where the fire department is? I know there's always little things, and we talked about some tonight, but just in a general sense, are you satisfied with the way it's going?
I just thought of something. The last meeting we had, we asked if we can get update on anything that's done on our vehicles. And I know that something was done on we just got the inspections done on our 530, right?
530
And I had never heard that. I know they done some work on it, I've never heard that.
Just In regards to that, Cameron's been out for almost 5 weeks. So that might be where, yeah, so he'll be back next week, so things will get back on track. If that's the issue, I'm not sure what was done to to the vehicles or whatever.
Let me check on that, because that's a good point too. I mean, that information should be, back and forth relatively quickly between the chiefs. So again, I'll put that on a to-do list and ask Scott to, see how Ferguson take a look at it. See if if there's a problem in the pipeline there in terms of getting you guys some information or not. Cause if not, then we should be on that.
The only information that I had got for the two vehicles, and I didn't know Cameron was out. And actually Cameron had texted me on both vehicles, so he must have been in touch with somebody, I don't know. But I didn't know he was off work there, and I apologize for that. That's all he told me. I know he texted me one morning, and he just said, Mike, he said, can you, because I always call dispatch so that to let them know that the vehicle's going to the garage, so Cameron always gets in touch with me or Keith or one of the captains, whatever. He happened to get in touch with me for 530 on one, I can't remember what day it was now. And I called dispatch, and then what I'll do, I'll put it on the pagers for all the firefighters saying that our pumper 530 is out of service until further notice. And then dispatch puts that in and all that, and I did the same thing for 534, the tanker up at Station 1. So, the only thing that I got on my text is that he was just bringing them to the garage up to Neil's in the creek. It was just to get motor vehicle inspections. The inspections must have been due on them.
They're due every year.
Yeah, so the only thing that I know between Cameron and I on the Texas that I got from Cameron, and God forbid, I didn't know he was off of work, he must have been texting it from his house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If I would've known that, geez, I would've, thought he would be.
So was there other work done beside the
Not that I know
inspections?
of, no.
Okay,
The only text that I received from Cameron is that he said, Mike, I'm bringing that truck there up to the garage.
okay, for
We're gonna
inspection.
get the guy
Okay.
onto it.
No, 432, they did.
432 the other day,
Check
I
it
got,
out.
yeah, that's when I got a call from Mark Guitar the other day from Station 2, and he told me there was foam leaking on the floor at Station 2 down here. He said, do you think I should bring it up to Neil to get a check? He said, because obviously you're losing foam here. I mean, we need foam when we fight fire. And I said, yes, for sure. I said, take the truck up to Neil. So he took the truck up to Neil the other day, and they checked it, and anyway, there was a little fitting there,
Yeah, well, it's a big fitting.
or a big fitting, whatever it was, and it was, I think,
It was
basically,
rotted,
it was rotted.
it was a brass fitting that rotted.
Yeah, so he replaced the fitting. But that's the only thing that I know that's been done. On the other two vehicles, at Station 1, it was for MVIs, and this one here was because of a broken fitting and it was leaking foam all over the floor at Station 2.
I also had a discussion with the chief in relation to this, the records of repair and whatnot. And I asked him, I said, when was the last time we had an oil change done on a truck? We can't answer that because we don't have the history. And it would be nice to say the last 3 years. I know it's asking a lot, but if we had the last 3 years, we would know, okay, the oil change are done every so often. Because we don't know when they're changed. Some guys are saying, well, I got metal filings in the oil. As a mechanic myself on truck, it's, when you start seeing metal filings, the old shiny stuff in the oil, you start questioning what's going on with this. Especially considering the engine's like $40,000. So, this way we would have a record, we could, between us, keep track of, in our own heads, okay, well, this was done here, maybe we should talk to Cameron, the public works manager. Let's put a good cycle in, because on the pumpers, you can't go by mileage, you have to go by hours, because you have more idling hours, pumping hours than you do actual driving on it, so.
I'd just like to add that this is a perfect example where the Monday.com platform would come in, because all of that stuff could be kept. The records could all be kept there. Anytime there's a truck going out, the report could be kept in there, and you'd all get a notification onto it. So I just want to, this would be a good example as to where that would come in handy.
It's a perfect example of where a database would come in handy. I mean, this is the perfect example, right? You would be able to, you wouldn't even need to come to ask anybody. You would have the information, you'd be able to type in, put your login and get that information. So I mean, that's a testament to needing that as anything I can think of. And, you know, certainly goes a long way towards saving people's, could be a long way to saving somebody's life, right? So, yeah, anyway, we'll have to work on that too, because that's something that you definitely need to have at your hands. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, maybe that system would be good and stuff, and once we get our new CAO, it's something we can look at. The thing is, I'm sure there's reports everywhere when, and I know from working at NB Power, when the vehicles were due for an oil change, you got a notice saying, okay, it's due for an oil change. So I'm sure that that's all somewhere's on a report, and it's all done. So that's another thing that I wonder if, you know, when the oil changes are done, maybe an email or a report sent to the fire chief and the other people here. And that way there you know when it's done, and you can always keep record of it. But like you say, if we go with the Monday.com, that'll be also another way of looking at it. So we'd have a couple of ways of looking at things.
Anyone else?
Yeah, if, I don't know if the rest of the council would like to have it, but I'll speak for myself. You guys throw around, 0432 or whatever, truck type thing. If it would be possible, I'd like to have like the number and what it pertains to, the, well, yeah. You have that? Okay. The last comment I'll make to that would be, I'd also like to know the age of those vehicles. Got that too? Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, anything else? Anything else, Chief Legacy? Deputy Mayor, or Deputy Mayor, Deputy Chief? Deputy Mayor Furlod? Dwayne, you're all good? Okay, I think that wraps it up, council. So can we have, the next meeting for the Fire EMO Committee will be, we'll turn that into a motion. How about that? Can we get a motion for the next meeting?
So moved. That the next meeting of the Fire EMO Committee will be Thursday, January 13th, 2022.
Can I get a seconder?
Second it.
All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Did you have, yes, sir.
7. Sorry, 7.
7th? Okay, so we'll amend that. Okay, motion passed. And the motion to adjourn. Can we have a motion to adjourn? Okay, motion by Chief Legacy to adjourn. Can we have a seconder? Seconder by Mr. Stevenson. And on the question, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Okay. Meeting adjourned. Thanks, everyone.